Emotional day.
I think that's an understatement.
Our stories are the same, but very different because our memories are different.
I'm not ashamed of who I am, and I'm proud and thankful to be a survivor.
How are you? So nice to see you.
I can't believe it's been 40 years.
Ridiculous.
Long overdue.
Here we go.
Yeah. So much to share.
Why did Ted Bundy choose me? I still have no idea why.
Ted Bundy is a unique story in American crime. It's not just one story, it's many stories. It's the media story.
Bundy is an educated, handsome murderer who charmed women with his looks and sensitive demeanor.
It's the law enforcement story.
He knew exactly what he was doing. He was a demon.
It's the victim stories.
If you had not called me when you did, I would have died.
They all come together, but at the core of it are people whose lives have been impacted by one person's evil conduct.
Ted Bundy was one of the most inhuman, vicious monsters that we've ever had in America.
I feel like Tara's too good for him. He should have some of the same things done to him as he did to all the girls.
This was certainly the biggest case that had ever been televised before.
Women thought he was a good-looking, well-educated guy.
You're fascinated by him.
Very, very.
Ted Bundy represented himself through his trials.
He didn't know enough about the law. He just knew enough to get himself in trouble.
He had escaped from prison twice.
He was conning them, but he's not the great, sly killer that people thought he was.
He was just a world ahead from a law enforcement perspective.
He did things that a smart person wouldn't do, but handsome, Republican law student, he was not the kind of person that would provoke suspicion.
I'm not guilty. Does that include the time I stole a comic book when I was 5 years old?
He got away with these murders, not because he was so smart, but because monsters are supposed to look like monsters.
I'm not afraid of him. He just doesn't look like the type to kill somebody.
They definitely didn't look like Ted Bundy.
For the most part, little Teddy, as they would call him, he seemed normal. However, it has been reported that one of the aunts woke up one morning and Ted had taken kitchen knives and placed them pointing at her on the bed. That's the first sign we have that something might be wrong with the child. If you look at the murders of Bundy, he did things that a smart person wouldn't do. Bundy was convinced that no matter what he did, he would escape law enforcement. But he made a mistake at Lake Sammamish. He identified himself as Ted, not just to the women that he abducted, but to those around them who would hear the conversation.
And also someone saw a car that they believed associated with him, which was a tan Volkswagen Bug with some sort of rack on it.
Ted Bundy's ego is what gave police their first lead. He got off on doing these things in broad daylight and getting away with it. But now, they knew his name was Ted, they knew what kind of car he had, and they also had a physical description, which they in turn used to make a sketch. Does that sound like a genius to you?
That sketch was on the news, it was in the newspapers, and we received thousands and thousands of tips.
January 15th, 1978 was the day a sleepy college campus changed forever.
Cheryl Thomas, Nancy Young, and myself, we lived together back in 1978. They were both students at the School of Dance. Cheryl could have been something huge.
Cheryl had a first date that night.
Nancy and I got home around 2 a.m. Cheryl's light was out.
Then we just went to bed.
That night, a very loud noise woke me up, startled me.
We heard all the knocking around, from middle of the house to the front of the house, and it went silent.
A night of terror at Florida State University.
We didn't know at the time that we were so close to dying.
Once Ted Bundy wandered onto the campus, it was an absolute rampage.
It was a frenzy. He was smashing them with that log. FSU was a homicidal boast. He did something that no one else had ever done. Assault many women from the same location and on the same night.
I looked at the blood spatter and it was like, what kind of person could do this?
I can't remember being attacked at all. To wake up in a room that you don't recognize was quite baffling. And they didn't want to describe right away how I was hurt. But my mother told me I was very upset every time a male nurse came into my room. The police asked me, "Do you know of anyone that would want to do this to you?" I couldn't imagine anything that I had done to deserve that attack. I absolutely loved to dance, and I liked the dance community that Florida State University had. The instructors were awesome. I lived in the dorm for the first semester, and that's where I met my friend Nancy Young. We decided to live off campus. We chose a duplex where I could have my half of the house, and then she had her half of the house. The separate entrance. It was just a perfect little house right by the FSU stadium. Debbie Ciccarelli moved in October with Nancy. She was a roommate with her. The night of the attack, we had returned from the Christmas holidays, and I had a date that evening. I drove and met my date at his apartment, and then we went to Big Daddy's, which was the big popular dance club. They played disco music. It was disco then. I think some of the sorority sisters were there. It was just like the big place to go and hang out and dance and have fun. And I remember when we came back, my date said, "Why don't you just stay the night instead of driving home?" But I only lived a couple of blocks away. So I said, "No, I'll just drive home." And I was tired anyhow. So I drove myself home. I don't know what time that was. It could have been 12:30 or 1. I know exactly what I did when I got home. I made a peanut butter and honey open face sandwich, turned on my TV for a minute, had that, and then I went to bed.
The first time I met Ted Bundy, he was on death row already. During the first meeting, he said, "Why should I talk to you and not somebody else?" And I said, "Because I'm here to learn." And he said, "Would you kill me?" And this is the first time I met him. And I said, "Well, I wouldn't take a whole lot of satisfaction in it, but if it was my job, and you're asking me if I'd pull the switch," I said, "I'd think of all those girls." And I said, "Yeah, I'd do it." He goes, "Okay, we can understand each other now." So the second or third time that I went there, we were talking, and we were really getting into some good stuff, although he's not admitting anything. And he just said, "You and all your buddies out there in law enforcement," he said, "you know, the way I see you, you're like fishermen. You're standing in front of a pond, and you're throwing your bait into the pond, and you're trying to catch the fish." And he said, "Some fish are going to grab it, but you know what fish they are? They're the ones that are inexperienced or cocky or don't know what you're trying to do, and you're going to catch a whole lot of those fish. They're not hard to catch. So what do? You mount them, you put them on a wall, you hold a press conference and say, 'Look what I've done.'" Talking about serial murderers, obviously. He said, "But on the very deepest depths of that pond," he said, "are the big fish, and you're not going to catch them unless you know more about them. And the only way you know about them is to go down there under there and be with them." And he said, "You can't do it, you'll drown." But I've been down there. I've been under there a long time. I think he really enjoyed talking to someone who was not judgmental. And I was judgmental. I mean, he had killed my wife or my daughter. I know that. I mean, when I shake his hands, I know those hands killed people, and they'd kill mine if he had the chance. But you have to compartmentalize that, you know? Otherwise you get nowhere.